welcome to Boardman21's channel. Hey everybody, it's Boardman21 and today's video is going to be on health versus armor and protections, how they interact, how the formula works, and which one is better to go for on your items. In this video, we are going to take out a lot of variables and we're going to just do a basic understanding of how it works. And that should give you an idea of how, when you know how your build is going to synergize, which one that you should be going for and which one is going to help you survive for the longest period of time or be able to take the most hits without dying. So, to begin, we have a character that's level 1 and you have 100 health. We have some items that are going to have some protections and some health, and we're going to show you exactly how these interact. First, let's go over the formula. The formula for armor and protections, as it's listed and written in the tooltip, is protects against fire damage. Your effective health against fire damage is the sum of your health and fire protection. The percentage value shown is going to be the percentage of fire damage mitigated. This is the formula for all protections. What this is literally saying is that the more health you have, the less protection you will have. And the more fire protection you have with the less health, the higher the percentage will be. The actual formula is fire protection, this 5, divided by this 5 added to your health. So it would be 5 divided by 100 plus 5 in this case. If you were to take 5 and divide it by 105, you would get 5. And here you can see it rounds up, but you get 4.7%, which is actually rounded to 5 since there's no decimal places here. Now, in this example, if we wanted to add a chest piece that has 33 necrotic protection, the formula would be 33 divided by your health 100 and the 33 necrotic protection. So, in this case, you would have 33 divided by 133. Which gives you 24.8%, which will round up to 25. When we throw this on, we'll get 25 necrotic percent deduction of all damage from necrotic sources. Now, if we're to add health, this will actually go down. Case in point, we have a shield here with 11 health. If we add this, the formula will then change, and instead of 100 health plus 33 necrotic, it will be 111 health plus 33 necrotic. So if we run these numbers, the new formula is going to be 33 divided by 111 plus 33, which is 144, which gives us 22.9R, which will round up to 23%. So we throw the shield on that has 11 health, and voila, 23%. So that's how the formula works. As health goes up, the percentage goes down, but your resistance is the same. But since you have more life, you mitigate less of the damage you take. In this example, if you were to take 100 damage hit, 23% of that would be reduced, meaning that you would actually only take 77 damage from that hit. So now that you know how the formula works and how it interacts, let's take a look at which one is actually better. And to do this, we're going to get rid of all the variables. So we're not going to do anything like glancing blow, damage over time, critical strike avoidance. We're not going to use prefixes. There'll be no vitality. There'll be no attunement. We're not going to do set health, and we're not going to do increased health or armor and protections. So just using some flat rates, what we're going to do is we're going to do a test. The test is if you were to have a max T1 affix of all health on all items versus a T1 affix of each of the protections so that it averaged out to be the same amount so they're on a level playing field, which one would actually be better for you? All T1 armor and protections or all T1 health? And is it the same at level 1 as it is at level 100? And luckily we have an entire formula that we put up and we did the numbers, and what we found is that at level 1 you have 100 health, and if you put all T1 health max stats on items, you would have a total of 257 health. If you were to do the same with no added health but just did a T1 max resist in each of your 10 items, you would have an average of 105 resistance. With that being said, if you were to take a 100 damage hit No matter which one you went with, health or armor and protections, you would die in 3 hits. With the armor and protections, you have a 51% damage reduction, so you actually only take 48.78% of the hit, leaving you with 51.2 of your original 100 health. As for if you had no resistance, you had 257 health, you took 100 damage, so you have 157 health left. Either way, it was 3 hits till you died. Now, at level 100, you naturally have gained a lot of health, which would reduce the effectiveness of resistances. In this case, your character with no added health would have 892 health. Your character with the 157 added health would have 1049. In this case, your resistances has now been cut down to where you're actually taking 90% of the original damage if you have that 105 resistance, whereas if you had the health and no resistance, you're still taking the 100 of the 100 damage. In this case, in order for you to die, it would take 9.96 hits if you had resistance and 10.49 hits if you add the added health. So in this case, if you just used one slot of suffix for either health or armor and protections, it would be best. You would survive the most hits with the added health, not the armor and protections. Now, there are some things that this doesn't take into account. For instance, you don't get added health from skills. You don't get added health from the passive tree as much as you do from items. You do get some, but not as much. If you have skills that proc armor and protections, then armor and protections wins out on this every time. In our example in this spreadsheet, what we did was for the druid, you have a passive node. We will actually pop it up right now for you to see that in your passive tree in the druid, if you go up top, when you do a critical hit, you can have 125% increased armor and protections. This is, of course, when you've critically hit, but in a bear, when you're doing 100% crit chance, you always have this. So if one passive, you don't get 125% more health, but you can get 125% more increased armor and protections. So since you're synergizing a whole build together, if you were to run this one node, this isn't including anything else from anywhere, not including skills, which the werebear skill itself can give you more base and everything, but just from this one skill, if you were to run that, with this, what you would end up with is actually an 80% damage taken instead of 90% damage taken, and it would take 11.3 hits for you to die. So then that puts armor and protections back on top of having increased health. And whether this is at level 1 or level 100, what we found was if you have a build that in any way uses skills or your passives to increase your armor and protections, it is not worth it to go for health. It is actually better for you to go for armor and protections by a long shot. And the more you synergize with skills and passives, for instance in this same tree, if you have exactly one companion, you can get 50% more armor and protections through strengthened bond. On top of that, in skills, which I can't see it right now, but if you go into the werebear tree and you go up above, I believe you can get 300 increased armor and protections and like 10% boost, which is just massive. So in this build, if you were to do a werebear, armor and protections would way outweigh just doing increased health on everything. Now you can do hybrid builds, but obviously if you went straight armor and protections, it would be more effective. Not all builds are like that. For example, builds like the Primalist Sentinel and the Mage who have channeling abilities can get armor and protections while channeling, which is a huge boost. You can't get increased health while channeling. So things like that make armor and protections even more efficient than just adding straight health. Believe me, I used to think that straight health was so much easier to get than trying to get all the resistances added up. But as it turns out, health is not as efficient in most cases. So as a general rule of thumb, it is almost always better, more efficient for survival to go with armor and protections. Now, depending on your build, if you only plan on doing defenses on your items and you do not plan on using any skills at all that give any sort of resistance boost, and you don't plan on putting onto anything in your passive tree that increases armor and protections or vitality or attunement, then you are better off going with straight life. I can't think of a build on the top of my head that doesn't implement at least one of those things in one skill tree. But if you do a build like that, then yes, in that case, straight health is the way to go. Now, I know this video has been very confusing and was probably really hard to follow, and for that, I am sorry. But the takeaways from this is you should definitely go armor and protections and try and stack it as much as you can, and in that case, you will take as many hits as possible before dying. The other benefit that you do get from armor and protections that you can't get from doing straight health is the fact that when you take damage over time, it does not take into account glancing blow or any other sort of damage deduction that's based on a hit, because damage over time is directly affecting you, and the only way to counter it is with armor and protections or with massive amounts of health regen that perform more regen than the damage over time is degenning. Now, I hope this video helped you understand a little bit about health and armor and protections and how they interact with each other. Thanks for watching.